Hello, my name is Aidan Walsh, and this PowerPoint presentation is going to explore A3 reporting, its concept, design, and use. So, the presentation will look initially at an introduction to A3 reporting, exploring the origins of the concept. Then look at some of the tools that are commonly used with A3 reports. The design of the A3 report. This is probably the most important section of the presentation, which will provide a step-by-step guide to how you might build an A3 report, some advantages of A3 reporting, and where you can get sample A3 reports on Moodle. So let's begin by looking at an introduction to A3 reporting. So A3 reporting or A3 problem solving, okay, where it gets its name is from the size of a sheet of paper. So an A3 page, typically 17 inches by 11 inches. And what people were looking for was a simple way to communicate to managers on one page the situation regarding a problem or an improvement opportunity. So the A3 report then is just that one A3 sheet of paper, and all the information relevant to that improvement opportunity is captured in summarized form on that A3 page. So it's utilized then as a simple way to capture and present information, with the idea that managers can very quickly look through the A3 page and get a good understanding of the situation that it is referring to. It can be used as a standardized approach to problem solving. So some organizations would uh, treat a lot of their continuous improvement effort in a standardized way and used A3 reports as the common way of communicating their continuous improvement opportunities. So everyone uses a standardized approach, and then managers and operators, regardless of their role in the organization, can walk up, understand the format of the E3 report, and follow the step-by-step process. And in this way, then, it's a visual storytelling approach to presenting information. So very usefully, the A3 report succinctly communicates the background to the problem, the current state of the problem, any goals that you wish to achieve, some analysis surrounding the problem or improvement opportunity, some countermeasures that you might be looking to introduce in order to deal with the problem or improvement opportunity, some future state that you might be trying to achieve, an evaluation of those countermeasures, and then how we are actually going to implement um, those as well, the implementation process chosen, and also then the evaluation of the success of those countermeasures and any follow-up actions that need to be taken. So if you like, it's a step-by-step story that you're telling to present information regarding the problem or improvement opportunity that the organization is dealing with. So this concept originated in Toyota and it's been used at Toyota since the 1960s. Again, as we just said, it just uses one page, and on that one page you describe the problem, analyze the problem, suggest countermeasures, implement a plan of action that can be taken, and then you evaluate the outcomes of that plan. Now, there are many different types of A3, so you can get some strategic A3s, and if you like, that are used for long-term planning. So this can be with your Hoshin Cannery in an organization, which is your policy deployment, so setting your long-term strategy for the next maybe 5 to 10 years, maybe even longer in some organizations. It could be 15 plus years. And looking at our strategic planning there, so what goals do we want to achieve in the long term, and how do we think we're actually going to get there? how are we going to break those long-term goals, those 10 to 15-year goals down into shorter, um, medium-term targets, maybe 3 to 5 years. And okay, how do we break those medium-term targets down into goals that we wish to achieve within the next 12 months or so? You can have a system-based A3, which might look at an entire value stream. So you might look at a value stream mapping scenario within an organization, or it could be looking at the design of a new product or process layout, and you can use it then for designing team planning, so designing new products or processes within the organization. Or it can be used at the process level. Okay, so and this in many organizations probably its most common use. So we might be looking at maybe developing standard operating procedures or evaluating the effectiveness of standard operating procedures, or we may be looking at problem solving, okay, in organizations, or indeed improvement opportunities and analyzing improvement opportunities. So where to direct our continuous improvement effort. So yeah, the duration of the different types of A3 can vary. So typically strategic is long-term, 6 months to 12 plus months, often a duration of many years. System, it tends to be medium-term, 1 week to 6 months. And process tends to be short-term, okay, kind of like a Kaizen event or a continuous improvement event. And often these might be carried out within a week. So just to quickly run through some of the possible uses of A3, so they can be used to describe, understand and solve problems. It can be used to present a new product concept, propose a technical solution, okay, to a situation or problem that the organization is experiencing. It can be used to capture knowledge from past programs. So this is a powerful effect that can happen, particularly in larger organizations. So for example, if you've got a multinational organization that may have different plants that operate across a manufacturing network that are producing similar products or services for similar customer groups, then you can share the knowledge. So if one plant, let's say in Ireland, conducts an A3 on a particular manufacturing process, there's no reason why we can't share that knowledge across the entire manufacturing network. Certainly with similar plants that produce similar products or identical products to the plant in Ireland. It could also be used to help explain an organization's vision, mission, and values. Okay, so where the organization wants to go, what its strategic direction is, how it intends to achieve that strategic directive, and what are the kind of values the organization will like its organization members to adopt while they are trying to achieve that vision and mission. It can also present team charters. Okay, so you have a process improvement team that's designed to tackle a particular issue with a process or an improvement opportunity with a process, and it can present the team charter. So who's involved, what their role is, what the implementation timeline is for the project, how the project's going to communicate, how it's going to go about achieving its goals, etc., etc. Okay. The A3 can be used in a marketing sense to present market research information and customer data. So it might present a current state in terms of what we think a market research is. It might present analysis of that market research, what we got from our feedback, and then that might warrant further investigation, further research to see if we are aligned with our customers' needs, if the products and services we offer are aligned with what our customer is telling us, the customer data that we've gathered. A3s can also be used to analyze trade-off decisions or cost benefits of improvement opportunity proposals. So for example, it could be looking at a new process layout in a plant, and it might suggest a number of alternative layouts, and then investigate these layouts as regards evaluating them in terms of their impact on critical performance indicators for the organization, the key performance indicators for the organization, and then looking at the cost-benefit trade-off of each of those layout proposals. Or it can be used to document a standard procedure or test. Okay, so how we might conduct a particular standard operating procedure or a quality test on a product or process. So we can use these A3s and the A3 process with our continuous improvement activity. It fits in nicely with the plan, do, check, act cycle that's commonly associated with continuous improvement activity. So at the planning stage here, we're looking at defining the problem, analyzing the problem, and identifying maybe the root cause, what's causing this problem to occur. In the do stage, then we're coming up with a solution, we're suggesting a solution, and we're implementing that solution. In the check phase, then we're confirming whether or not the solution has delivered the desired results, and we're confirming those results. And then in the act stage, we're looking at standardizing the countermeasures that have been suggested in the A3. So if you like, standardizing the procedures around the solutions that we've implemented. Now with A3 reporting, you can use a number of different quality, lean, and various continuous improvement tools. So in the next few slides, I'm just going to go through maybe give an overview of the most commonly used tools with A3 and maybe some guidelines then for selecting appropriate tools. Okay, so you can see here there's a whole range of tools that are used. Some of your quality tools like check sheets and control charts and the fishbone diagram, flow charts. You can use kind of presentation tools like Gantt charts and histograms to present Pareto diagrams to present information in a summary form. You can look at some of our problem-solving tools, such as 5 Whys, fishbone diagram, look at maybe spaghetti diagrams, run charts, etc. We can look at relationships with our scatter diagrams, relations diagram, activity network diagrams that show kind of critical paths. And we can also use tools such as mapping tools, such as value stream mapping, and tree diagrams as well. Okay, so there's a whole range of tools. In other sections of the module on Moodle, or indeed in other modules, you may have come across some of these tools. Again, there's no need to use all of these. Really what you want to try and do is select those tools from this list, and this list isn't exhaustive, and then use the most appropriate tool for the situation that you're trying to communicate. And that's important. Okay, so just let's look at some guidelines then for selecting tools that can be used. Okay, so you want to select the correct tool. Okay, so you maybe want to think about the resources. Okay, so what's the cost, time, effort, hardware, software, people needed to use this tool? Okay, so we don't want to use a particular tool. So for example, sometimes simple process flowcharting, process mapping may be more suitable to use than detailed value stream mapping, because value stream mapping tends to take up more cost, time, and effort, and people involvement. Okay, it's also important to use tools that you feel comfortable with, so you will gain experience with using the various tools as you move along your lean and continuous improvement journey. And the more often that you use these tools, the more comfortable you get with them. Okay, but it's advisable not to use a tool if you don't really understand how that tool can be used, or if you don't feel comfortable. And if you feel like you have to use a tool, then it's good to get trained up on it, or maybe to seek advice from someone who does have that expertise. Yeah, I mean, with A3 reporting, you're typically working in a continuous improvement team, and that will provide you with opportunities maybe to train others in the use of a tool if necessary. So if you understand it, but other members of the team don't necessarily understand the tool, that's a training opportunity. You can actually use this opportunity then to train up other members of the team in a particular tool and use of a tool. The data integrity is important. Okay, so GIGO there, GIGO, stands for garbage in, garbage out. Okay, so with the tools, you want to be sure that we're using the right data, because if we start with the wrong data, we're not going to get the right results. Okay, so it may be important then to present the data in the right form and use the data in the right form. So for example, if we're using something like control charts or statistical process control, that we make sure that the data that we're analyzing is representative of the process that we're investigating or the problem opportunity that we're investigating. Again, sometimes people feel once they go into an A3 report or a continuous improvement activity that they've got to use all the tools at their disposal. Um, and they fall into the trap of over-analyzing a problem, opportunity, or situation. So it's advisable not to get stuck in an analysis paralysis. Okay, so you're too busy analyzing to actually develop improvement recommendations or to improve the process. Um, and again, there's a fine line between the types of tools that you want to um, train up and use people in. Okay, so you don't have to get your team trained up in every tool, and you don't have to use every tool. Okay, but it's a good practice to kind of expand your toolkit the more you use A3. So maybe start off with a core toolkit, and maybe then add additional tools as you go along, as long as the circumstances um, are suitable for using that tool. And then finally, you want to do as much practice as possible. So the more the practice, the better you will get at completing A3s. My advice is just to practice whenever you can. If you're faced with problem opportunities or improvement opportunities in work and indeed in your own studies. You can use A3s, for example, to present how you might look at completing an assignment or completing an essay or a practical lab, etc. Okay, so let's move on now to the main section of this presentation, which revolves around the design of the A3 report. And this is important, okay, because the form itself isn't the solution. It's really the thinking and the process that makes it a powerful tool. And there's different versions of the A3 report, so there's no one A3 form that does it all. Make it fit your requirements. However, it is typically read from the upper left-hand corner down and then the upper right side down. So typically you see an A3 report subdivided into a left-hand side and a right-hand side, and you read from the upper left-hand corner down the left-hand column, and then go from the upper right-hand side down to the right-hand column. So the A3 page is split into two columns, one on the left side, one on the right side. However, many organizations use different designs, and again, it's important to check with your own organization which design is recommended to use in a particular scenario. So the typical A3 format will contain information, as we've kind of already alluded to, under a number of different headings. And we're going to look at each of these in turn. So we've listed the main headings there, and now I want to look at each of these in turn. An important point with completing A3 is that it should be visual, okay, if at all possible. So only use words when you can't describe something with a visual, okay, something like a sketch, a graph, a chart, a diagram. So the more visual it is, the better in terms of communication, in terms of understanding, etc. No one likes to read large amounts of text, and it's usually in a small font on an A3 report. And your A3 should be easy to read, should be logical, and should tell a story. Okay, so we look at the guide to completing an A3. We start off typically with some basic information, okay, header information. Okay, so basic information about the company, the team, the date, etc. And an important consideration here is that you're going to be doing many of these, and therefore you need to have a way to identify them by area or team. Indeed, some organizations, for example, Nipro, that's in is part of the Jabil group. Jabil is spelled Jabil, large multinational organization, and Nipro is a water plant within that group. And indeed, they have many manufacturing plants right around the world. So if you've got a manufacturing network of that scale and size, you may want to have some sort of filing system that will make the A3 reports available in terms of a learning database for everyone in the organization. And then you can search these A3 reports, and you can clearly identify the type of problem the A3 is relating to, and a particular area of the organization, and a particular team within that area that's worked on the A3. Normally, the first upper left-hand corner deals with the background to the issue. Okay, so maybe the background, the business case, the reason, the need or issue. And you want to focus here on what the issue is, not the solution. Okay, so you're not jumping straight ahead to a solution here. You're just clearly explaining the issue that led to the problem or led to the improvement opportunity. And it can be useful to use a customer focus. Okay, so now I've taken an example here that I'm going to use to run through the different sections as we go through the step-by-step approach to completing the A3. And this is taken from the excellent award-winning book, Understanding A3 Thinking by Sobek and Smalley. That's a good resource, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. So here they have presented an A3 report, okay, and in the top left-hand corner here we've got the background to the situation the A3 report is trying to deal with. So we can see here this company, Continental, set corporate goals for 2006. Like many organizations, typical corporate goal might be to increase global market share, improve quality and service to customers, improve our profitability, etc. And they're highlighting there that this particular A3 is in the area of improving quality and service. In the next column, they highlight the manufacturing goals for 2006. Okay, so it relates to this particular goal of reducing scrap by 15%. And then they talk about how it relates to that. Okay, so you can see there's a decline in the overall scrap percentage for 2004, 2005. However, something seems to happen here in 2006. We're not meeting that goal. We're currently at 2.6%, where we'd like to be at 2.3%. So nice and succinctly, they're showing the background to the problem. Okay, which corporate goal are we looking at? What facet of that corporate goal? And where we currently are, and we can see there's a 0.3% gap between where we are and where we should be. And again, it's done nicely, it's done visually, easy to follow. The next step appears most often as depicting the current state. So we're providing facts, data, information about the current state. Now, the best way to do this is actually to go to your Gemba. So visit the process that we're looking at. Visit, in terms of the process, the area, might be a particular workstation, might be a particular section of the process, and might be a particular handoff between processes, whatever it is. Just physically go there and investigate, get all the useful data, maybe talk to the operators there, and then think about how we're going to present that data. So make it visual, use graphs, drawings, etc. We're not trying to judge our data here, we're just presenting the data as it currently exists. Okay, we're not jumping ahead to the solution, and that's really important. So don't try and solve the problem during this phase. Okay, and there will be a strong temptation to do this, okay? But you don't want to jump ahead to this stage unless you've analyzed all the relevant data. So this will come later. And that's important with the A3. You stick with the step-by-step approach. Don't jump ahead and skip steps. So here we're only presenting the current state. Okay, so again, if you look at our example, you can see there they've presented the scrap by department between the different departments, okay, and the amount that can be attached to that, the monetary amount. And then they show a breakdown then of the machine shop. Okay, so they've targeted the machine shop here. It's the largest account for scrap in terms of volume, in terms of monetary amount. So they're going to say, well, we want to try and attack this. We'll go to the largest amount. Okay, from your graph there. And then they're looking at each of the processes within the machine shop. Okay, so the milling, the turning, the drilling, etc. They're highlighting the scrap percentage as it relates to those departments and the monetary amount between that. And they want to talk then, there's a bit of a legend there at the end that shows, okay, where our scrap percentages are for those particular areas within the machine department. So again, nice and visual, fairly straightforward to see, can be seen at a glance. The next step typically involves us coming up with some sort of goal that we wish to achieve. So we're indicating a goal and target that's desirable. Now, what's recommended here is that you might use something like the SMART acronym. You've probably all heard about this. So we set a goal that's simply stated, that's measurable, okay, in some sort of quantifiable term if possible. So in this particular example, we're looking at a couple of different metrics. So we're looking at the percentage of scrap in our processes, and we want to get that down to a certain level, in this case 2.3%. And we're also looking at the volume of cost associated with that. So a couple of different quantifiable metrics there that are measurable. Okay, and it's great if we have a measurable metric that we can use. We want to set a target that's achievable and realistic. So the A and the R there are kind of closely related. It should be a stretch. Okay, it shouldn't be too easy to achieve. You want it to kind of stretch the organization's capabilities, but it should also be realistic. Okay, it shouldn't be something that's impossible to achieve. And finally, then the T there in the acronym stands for timely. So should be able to achieve in a timely manner in terms of meeting those goals that you've indicated. So you can see here in this example of the A3 report, they just state the goal. And the goal here is by the end of 2006, they want to reduce the scrap in the rough grind form. So following on from our current state, from its 3.7% down to 2%. And they also want to reduce the scrap in final grading from its 8.7% down to less than 2%. Okay, and that would bring each of those sections within the machining department then under our target figure for scrap. It should have a significant impact on the overall situation. Our next step is to look at the analysis of the problem. So at this point, you want to analyze the information that you have gathered and try and get to the root cause of the problem. And quite often use tools such as root cause analysis or 5 whys. Some of those tools that we, quality and lean tools that we mentioned, are commonly used in conjunction with an A3. Okay, so again, if we go back to our example, here they've used the root cause analysis. So they kind of highlighted one particular area. There's an undersized shaft defect that causes 72% of the grinding defects that they identified um, up there in a current state, and then using their fishbone diagram root cause analysis, they've identified then, okay, the man, machine, material, and method, each of those branches of that fishbone diagram. So one of the quality lean tools, and they've investigated that further and presented that analysis as well. And again, it's in visual form, it can be easily seen and easily read. Okay, in the next stage, you want to try and get to some sort of kind of future state. So you want to describe a future state or target conditions. Okay, so what do we really want? So in this case, we want to get our scrap down to certainly under 2.3%, but under 2% to be good. Okay, then we want to identify what are the countermeasures. What are we going to do about this particular issue? Okay, we've analyzed the problem now. We've identified potential areas where it might be causing the problem. So what are our countermeasures to those problems? How do we intend to solve them? And it's important that we don't optimize one area and sub-optimize another. This can sometimes happen. We make changes that positively impact one area but negatively impact another. So we don't want to do that. So be careful in what you recommend and how you evaluate that particular countermeasure. Try to understand the impacts that the introduction of one countermeasure might have on other areas of the business. You should also try to be as creative as possible. Okay. So you want to try and come up with novel solutions. And you don't really want to be inhibited by your knowledge of the current state. So you've presented that current state now, but it's very easy to kill off countermeasures there. You say, oh, look, we can't do that here. That's not the way we do things here. And rather than exploring a countermeasure that might prove useful and valuable, we kill them off too early. And that's not a good way to come up with solutions. And also in this section, quite often there's an implementation plan. Okay, so again, use the 5 W's and the how and the H there. So who, what, where, when, where, why, and how. So who's going to do the work, what's going to be done, when is it going to be done, what's the deadline, where is it going to be done, so what area of the business, why are we doing this, okay, so which problem or improvement opportunity is this related to, and how is it going to be done, okay. So you're specifying the steps and the timing, identifying things that can be done maybe concurrently or parallel, identify the team leaders and who's responsible for each of these tasks, and also have some sort of metric or way of keeping track of the progress. So are we on track to actually meet this or not? Now, quite often you see something like this where you've got a table or a chart that shows the causes, then shows the action items, so what we're going to do in terms of the countermeasures to meet that cause, then shows the person that's responsible, okay, what date it's due by, and then the overall finding. Okay, so it could be a variant on that table, but we really want to show what we plan to do to deal with these countermeasures that we've identified. Okay, so moving on then, the next stage to completing the A3 would be an evaluation stage. And really what you want to do here is you want to try and specify metrics in terms of what you're trying to achieve from introducing your countermeasures and then gather the results. So you're trying to understand, okay, well, have the countermeasures worked? Okay, maybe do a bit of a cost-benefit analysis on that. You might explain the variation, any variation between what you thought you would achieve in terms of planned results versus what the actual results were in the test. You may decide to experiment further. Okay, so you might want to dig deeper and try and understand why that variation occurred and the consequences of that. And really also here what you should be trying to do is trying to prioritize your project. So you will probably have identified a number of countermeasures, and based on your evaluation of the impact that those countermeasures may have on the overall improvement opportunity or problem you're trying to solve, you may want to prioritize one over the other, and maybe that'll be on a cost-benefit analysis. Here you should also try and capture qualitative benefits. So it's always easier in many respects to capture quantitative benefits such as cost reduction or scrap percentage reduction and so on. But there could also be qualitative benefits. So for example, a new standard operating procedure might improve employee morale. New working arrangements may also have a positive impact on employee morale. Maybe training initiative might have a positive impact on employees' attitude to continuous improvement and to establishing a lean culture in the organization. So try and capture your qualitative benefits as well. If you can, try and convert those into quantitative measurements, but it may not always be possible. So for example, things like employee morale may be measured using surveys, and you might get a percentage of employees that, for example, stated they were highly engaged in a current state, and when you went back and investigated that in a future state, you might have increased that percentage, which would give a sense that our engagement activities have been working better there. And again, you should also consider the total long-term impact on the organization. So some countermeasures will have an impact not only on the project in question, but also the broader organization and the broader organization into the future. So think about your long-term impacts as well. So again, their example, you can see here, they're showing the effect of the countermeasures here, measuring the defects and the numbers of defects in terms of the percentage at different times in the year. And what you're seeing here in this kind of trend graph is that the defects are absolutely falling from highs of above 8% in terms of one line there to under 2%, and with the ultimate target of both lines being under 2% by the end of the test period. And again, this seems to indicate that, okay, the countermeasure here is working, because that's what our overall goal was, to get that scrap percentage down below 2%. And you can see by the trend lines that it has been steadily improving over the course of the implementation, and in particular where certain aspects of countermeasures have been implemented, you can see there's significant reductions. Now, the last stage in an A3 is quite commonly self-sustaining countermeasures or follow-up actions. And really what you've got to do here is you've got to try and think about, okay, what's required to ensure that these countermeasures that you've implemented are sustained and that they're continued to work into the future. And there may also be some follow-up actions from the implementation of countermeasures. But it's important to realize it can be easy to slip back into old habits, and that you need to put in procedures to ensure that any implemented change that you have introduced are sustained. You can see here they've got follow-up actions on this example. Okay, so these seem to be more kind of technical, if you like, follow-up actions initially there when you're establishing coolant check, etc., establishing bearing check. Okay, so operations and maintenance kind of responsibilities there. Yeah, but I mean, you've also got, communicating findings to similar plants, so a bit of knowledge sharing there, and even extending it outside the organization and discussing with the supplier, the original equipment manufacturer. Okay, so you've got a follow-up action there. Okay, and that then pretty much concludes the A3 report. So you can see there, you've got a template that tells a story. So starting in the top left-hand corner, you begin with your background and moving on to current condition, the goal, some analysis, some countermeasures or future state, presentation of results, and then some follow-up actions as well. Okay, we're going to look at some of the advantages of the A3 reporting. These are fairly self-evident from the example that we've just looked at. But some of the most cited advantages is that it helps a problem definition. It forces people to think, okay, well, what is the exact problem we're trying to solve, and how do we define that problem? It also aids problem solving. Okay, so it can help you identify potentially better solutions to problems and improvement opportunities by applying a robust, standardized approach um, that's understood by everyone in the organization. And that can help you find better solutions and also avoid you missing out on certain steps in problem solving that are important. It also presents those problems and solutions in a clear visual format. It's easy to read. It's much more visual, easier to interpret for a manager rather than reading a detailed report. It's easier to interpret. And because of that, it's an excellent communication tool. And everyone in the organization, everyone that's involved in this activity then can view the problem and solution in the same way. And many organizations decide to display their A3s kind of in corridors or in information areas or information boards at different places in the organization. Some organizations that we have visited on our WIT visits, we've kind of seen A3s on display in the corridors in organizations leading to, if you like, common areas. So kind of around the canteen area or even on the walls in the canteen in some organizations. Okay, so there's some sample A3 reports. Okay, you can get lots of A3 report samples if you do a Google Images search and just type in A3 problem solving or A3 reports. You'll get examples from many different industries, so I'm cognizant that you all come from different industries, so it's important to maybe look for examples that maybe might be pertinent to your own industry. And then on the Lean Tools and Techniques one Moodle page, there's also some examples of completed A3 reports. So in the A3 section, you might have some examples there, and in particularly in the continuous assessment schedules section, you will have some examples there as well. Okay, so make sure you look at the examples on Moodle when you're preparing your own A3 report and presentation. And finally, just some sources from where that I've taken information from in terms of preparing this presentation. So the key source, I suppose, an excellent book, Understanding A3 Thinking, and it looks beyond the report and looks at some cultural dimensions as well, is this book, Understanding A3 Thinking by Dermot Sobek and Art Smalley. Again, this book is a Shingo Prize recipient, so if you feel like you're going to be using A3s a lot in your work, it could be worth purchasing that particular text. And I've also used Manus 2009, the Intro to A3 Problem Solving, and Flinchpad 2012, A3 Problem Solving Applied Lean Thinking. And you can get those sources via the links there. Also check the Moodle section on A3 Thinking. I've got some other articles that I've uploaded there for you, and some links that you can also browse through in your own time as well. Okay, so that's it for this presentation. I hope you found it interesting and informative and indeed useful, and thank you for your attention.